Before we dive into the book of Romans, I want to take a few minutes to give you some context, some background, really just what you need to know, what will help you know beforehand as we dive into this book, especially since there's some complicated parts. The people Israel believed in one creator God. They were monotheists. They were creational monotheists. That means they believe there are no other gods. All the other gods of the other nations throughout the story of Israel are false. Now, they believe that this creator God made a good world. He made humanity in his own image. He made them to be creators like the creator God, as well as to be a fruitful people that multiply and care for the good world that this creator God made. He also made these people to be in relationships, to love one another and to love this creator God. So there's this good world, there's these good relationships, there's a love relationship with God and a love relationship with one another. People turn away from God. They reject him and his authority. People sin, this term the Bible uses, they sin. They hurt one another. They hurt creation. They hurt God. And we know this is the story of Adam and Eve, and everyone who comes after them kind of follows this story. And there's this broken relationships, this broken humanity, this broken world. This God, though, isn't giving up on humanity. He's going to keep seeking them. He's going to keep seeking to buy them back or redeem them. He's going to keep seeking to restore them. He's going to keep seeking and making ways to bring them back into a relationship, to make things good again, to make things right again. He makes promises with them. He forms covenants with people. He does this with Adam, and then he does this with a man named Noah, and then he makes this big covenant with a man named Abraham. He chooses Abraham and his people to be in a special covenant, a special relationship where through Abraham and his people, there'll be a light sent out to all the people and all the nations so that everyone can be back in this relationship with God. God chooses Abraham and his nation Israel to be a light to bring all people back to God. Israel's meant to be a chosen people, a royal priesthood, and they're meant to be this chosen people for the sake of all the nations. And Israel fails at this task. But again, God is going to be faithful and he's going to keep working. So as we begin the book of Romans, the world is not as it should be. God's people, Israel, are not as they should be. And God is going to be faithful to his covenant and set things right. Jesus is going to be the key to that covenant and the faithfulness of God. Now, there's two statements I want you to keep in your head as we read. And these both come from a biblical scholar named N.T. Wright. So two statements that if you have these in your head for the next 3 weeks, this will help you and help you remember where you are in the book. So the first statement, Romans is about God's faithfulness. It is about his covenant faithfulness. He is a God who is faithful to his promises. He's faithful to Adam. He's faithful to Abraham. He's faithful to his people, Israel. And ultimately, he's going to be faithful to the whole world and keep his promise to the whole world. Whatever you think about God or the faith or whatever questions you have, when you finish Romans, you should think, wow, Paul really believes that this God is a faithful God who keeps his word and his promises. We live in a world where promises are broken so easily. When I read Romans, I'm excited to come back and remember that there's a God who I trust who keeps his promises. So God keeps his promises. That's something you gotta see when we read Romans. The second thing you have to remember and keep in mind was what God was supposed to do for Israel at the end of history, he had done for Jesus in the middle of history. God's people, Israel, expected something to happen at the end of time as we know it. They expected the world to be fixed, to be changed at the end of history. And Paul believes that God does something through Jesus right in the middle of history. So there's a new age that everyone thought would come at the end of history. There's this new age that all the Jewish people believed would come at the end of time. And Paul is sharing this good, crazy news that no, what we all thought was going to happen way at the end, in Jesus, it's actually already starting right here and now, and we can be a part of it.